Everyone ready? Good afternoon and thank you all for coming. Can I start with an apology? I'd just like to say sorry for keeping you all waiting. I am Deputy Commissioner Michael Clement. Also with me is Scott Gallagher from the Ministry for Primary Industries. I'll read a short statement first and then there'll be an opportunity for questions of both of us. By now you will have read our media statement and know what we're here to talk about. Police are appealing for information regarding a threat to contaminate infant and other formula in an apparent protest over the use of 1080 poison in pest control. We're also appealing for the person or group responsible for that threat to make themselves known to police in order to resolve this matter. Our investigation follows anonymous letters received in November 2014 at the latter part of last year by Fonterra and Federated Farmers. The letters threatened to contaminate infant and other formula with 1080 unless New Zealand stopped using 1080 for pest control by the end of March 2015. The letter writer threatened to disclose the threat publicly if the government did not meet this demand by this time. While Fonterra received one of the letters, the threat did not refer specifically to Fonterra product. The threat referred to infant and other formula. While there is a possibility this is a hoax, we have from the outset treated this threat as very serious. We are encouraging the letter writer to come forward to police. They may not have fully considered the potential implications of their actions, and now is the time to put things right by contacting us. Since November, an Auckland-based investigation team, Operation Concord, has been working closely with Fonterra, Federated Farmers and the Ministry for Primary Industries. This investigation has been pursuing a number of lines of inquiry. All necessary resources are being directed to this investigation. It is a multifaceted investigation involving a number of specialist groups and support agencies. If anyone has any information which might assist police, then we want to hear from you. Even if you are unsure whether this information will be helpful, we still want you to contact us so that we can make that assessment. You might be aware of someone who has strong views with regard to 1080 and has made threats. You may be aware of someone who has discussed how to access supplies of 1080. Let me be clear, the information you have could be vital to our investigation. Can I reiterate? Please make contact with us. The means by which you can do that are through a special number dedicated to Operation Concord on 0800 723 665. Information can be emailed to us at opconcord@police.govt.nz. Alternatively, information can be provided anonymously to the organisation Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. Apologies?
Go on 3:45. Can we put out?
If it's 3:45, you can file stories. The stories can be published.
Sorry.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. I'm Scott Gallagher, Deputy Director General at the Ministry for Primary Industries. The Ministry for Primary Industries has been working closely with the police in responding to this criminal blackmail threat. The first priority for the Ministry for Primary Industries has been and will continue to be the protection of the health and well-being of all consumers. This criminal threat is designed to cause fear in order to generate a domestic policy outcome. It is using food as a vehicle, but it should not undermine our confidence in New Zealand's food system. We are confident that New Zealand infant and other formula is just as safe today as it was before the threat was made. People should continue to use the product as they always have. This type of threat does occur from time to time internationally. This is the first such threat we have experienced here in New Zealand. But everyone should have confidence that we have one of the world's strongest and most secure food safety systems. New Zealanders can be proud that our food safety model is among the best in the world. New Zealand manufacturers and retailers maintain high levels of security and vigilance as a normal routine. Since this threat was made, security and vigilance has been significantly increased. The Ministry for Primary Industries, in conjunction with other government agencies, manufacturers and retailers, have put in place a range of additional measures to further protect infant and other formula. These measures range from strengthened security measures in retail, enhanced milk and milk product testing, including a new 1080 testing program, increased vigilance by all the relevant players in the supply chain, extra physical security in manufacturing processes, and also a system to audit the vulnerability of dairy processing facilities in response to this deliberate criminal act. The combined efforts of the testing regimes of the Ministry for Primary Industries and industry confirm there is no 1080 in infant and other formula. It is important to note that the new testing regime that we have put in place in response to this threat is in addition to the already strong security and safety measures that New Zealand manufacturers already pride themselves on. As a result of all of the mitigations that manufacturers and retailers have put in place since this threat became apparent, we can say we are confident that New Zealand infant formula is just as safe today as it was before the threat. In fact, if anything, we have greater confidence on the back of the range of mitigations which all of the relevant players in the supply chains have put in place. And people, mums and dads, should continue to use the product as they always have. At the same time, the Ministry for Primary Industries continues to encourage people to be vigilant when buying infant and other formula. Our advice has always been, and will continue to be, for people to check packaging for any signs of tampering. And we are clearly reinforcing that advice as a result of this criminal blackmail threat that has been made. Much like the police, we appeal to all New Zealanders who think they may have any information about this criminal blackmail threat to contact either the police or the organisation we know as Crime Stoppers. If any product appears to have been tampered with, for example, seals broken or punctured, then clearly it should not be consumed, and it should be reported to the Ministry for Primary Industries as quickly as possible. The Deputy Commissioner and myself are now happy to take any questions.
Deputy Commissioner, could I ask you, where on the scale of crime does this fit? It's obviously very serious. Does it fit in the category of a terror threat?
We have always treated it as a crime of blackmail. And so that's where it sits, at the serious end of the range of investigation. From the outset and to this day, we have treated it as a crime of
So
blackmail.
it doesn't fit at that level of a national sort of terror threat?
Well, we might compare some of the investigative techniques with a terror threat and apply them in this scenario, but we're not treating it as a terrorism offence. We're treating it as an offence of blackmail.
So you found out about this in
Are any
November.
particular
You found
products?
out
One at a time.
Are any particular products in the firing line at this stage, or is it still a general threat?
The threat at the time and as it remains is to infant and other formula.
But not any particular product? Any
That's right.
particular brand?
No particular brand.
So you found out about this threat in November. Why are you only telling people now?
For a variety of reasons. We have always prepared on the basis that we would be appealing to the public for their assistance. That's not uncommon in an investigation of this type or other serious investigations. So routinely we will commence an investigation out of the public eye, and at an appropriate time we will appeal to the public. So in addition to that, our assessment of the likelihood that the threat would be carried out has been low and remains low, and the investigation is just one factor to be considered. It might be more common in other investigations for the police to be the only determining factor in terms of the investigation, but in this case it's clearly there are many other factors to consider, one of which has been food safety, and for the reasons that you have heard from Scott just previously, that was one of the factors in terms of the timing of the appeal.
If you were taking this threat seriously and there was the chance that somebody could have contaminated infant formula, why would you wait 4 months to tell the public about that?
Well, I'll reiterate, we have taken it from the outset very seriously. There's no question about that. From the very first day on which the threat was conveyed to me, which was on the day that the letters were received, we have treated it as a very serious investigation. And for the reasons I've pointed out just now, the appeal to the public hasn't been necessary given those factors I talked about.
So the facts are that you haven't been able to find this person and you've got no choice but to go public.
That's I think what I've said previously is true, is that we have been conducting many inquiries up until this point, and it's now appropriate. And it was always going to be the case that we would appeal to the public for their assistance. But on occasions, and this is an investigation of that type, there can be some advantage for the investigation in keeping the detail to the investigation itself as opposed to in the public arena.
Just a question for the MPI, Chief Executive Scott. How realistic is it for young mums and dads out there to carry on feeding their children infant formula knowing that this person is at large and the deadline hasn't actually hit yet?
Well, I think what is important is that since we became aware of this threat, we have been going through and reviewing all parts of the supply chain. And as things stand today, and as a result of the engagement we've had with manufacturers and retailers, we have every confidence that any product on the shelves today for mums and dads is as safe as it is now as it was before the threat, and will continue to be that case. And I think that's the true benefit of the hard work that government agencies, manufacturers and retailers have been able to do in the last couple of months to make sure that we were addressing all of the issues around any possible vulnerabilities, shored them up, and ensure that we now have every confidence in the product in play.
But the critical deadline is the end of March. That's when the threat comes into play. So at that point, what are you going to do about mums and dads and everyone else who, that's when the threat comes into play, basically, end of March. It doesn't matter about now, it's the end of March, it's the deadline.
I think a key factor along the whole way, as the Deputy Commissioner highlighted, is that we were always intending to come out and release this information. And a key point about releasing the information is for everyone to have increased vigilance, for everyone to have increased vigilance around not just supply chains, but also for the appeal that if anyone out there has any information on which they can assist the police to track down the perpetrator or perpetrators, then now is the time for those people to contact.
Okay, so on the food
blackmail
safety,
had threatened to go public in March. Would authorities have chosen to go public now?
As I said earlier, it was always the intention of the police from the outset of the investigation to go public with the threats, providing we didn't reach a conclusion with regard to the perpetrators earlier on. So we have planned from the outset to go public and to make an appeal if that was a necessary part of the investigation. We had hoped, obviously, to be able to solve it. We haven't to this date.
so what does a young mum or dad do if they are worried that their batch of infant formula has 1080 in it? How can they possibly tell? What can they do at home to mitigate risk?
Well, I think as always, what we've always been strongly advocating, and we will reinforce that point, is if mums and dads believe there's any sign of tampering with the product, then they should not consume it and they should contact the Ministry for Primary Industries immediately, and we'll take things from there. But what we are seeing is on the back of all of the mitigations and measures through increased security through the supply chain, increased vigilance, that mums and dads can have the confidence that the product is safe to continue to provide for their infants the way they've always done.
So,
Any
Deputy
particular
Commissioner,
reason
did
that
you
you
know
went
where
public
the
today?
letter originated from?
Maybe the lady in the front.
Is there any particular reason why you went public today? And are you worried that all this increased publicity might spark them to carry out that threat?
Well, there have been some developments today that have identified at this moment as the appropriate time to appeal to the public.
Can you say what they are?
I'm not prepared to speak about them. They'll become apparent with the fullness of time, I think.
Do you know which post centre that letter went through? Do you have any idea about?
Yes, I do, but for reasons I'm sure you'll identify with the investigations wants to retain some of the initiative with regard to what's held by police. That's a very common approach when we're dealing with serious investigations, and it's the approach that we prefer to take in this case. I'm not saying that it might not be appropriate in the coming days to release more information, but for the time being, this is the amount of information we are comfortable releasing
Okay,
at the moment.
It's just that the photo that you've released has the post stamp on it, so I'm sure
Right.
if anybody looked hard, they could see where it came from.
Well, they may do. Welcome all detectives out there. At the end of the day, we're appealing for people's help. It's just a matter of striking the balance between retaining as much initiative as we can, but while giving the public enough information which will inform them about how they might be able to help.
Looking broader at some of the implications of this, how fearful are you at MPI about the implications for trade, and in particular with China, when they see news of another food scare to do with infant formula in New Zealand?
Well, I think what has been our key priority is actually the protection of health and well-being of all consumers, and particularly the most vulnerable in our society. And that will continue to drive how MPI is approaching this issue. But clearly, on the back of this announcement today, we're going to continue to engage with international markets to give them the sort of assurances that I'm sharing with you today. And as I say, on the back of all the mitigations and measures that manufacturers and retailers working with us have put in place, we have every confidence in the product and the integrity of that product and the safety of that product.
So what is your message to consumers in China? Because there is a lot of them, and we know how they will react to this. What is your message to consumers in China?
Our message to consumers in China or any other market is that New Zealand infant formula or other products continue to be safe, that everyone should have every trust in the integrity of the product, and on the back of all of the mitigations that we've been putting in place here in New Zealand through the manufacturing and retail chains, that people can have confidence that that product continues to be as safe as it is today as it was previously.
How
Was there
have
any-
known anti-T90 groups responded to the police inquiries?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
There's a number of known anti-T90 groups, quite public. I'm assuming you've spoken to them. How have they responded to your investigation?
We've conducted a number of inquiries already, not necessarily with the 1080 groups that you speak of, but certainly in a phasing sense, as the investigation takes its course, they will be the sorts of people that we would speak to, and indeed the appeal to whom I make today is that if they are amongst those that feel as though there are people in their ranks that have expressed a threat with regard to 1080, then they would be the sorts of people that we would like to come forward.
Sorry, just to clarify, you haven't actually spoken to those groups yet, despite the threat being made in November?
We've spoken to a number of people. I'm not going to go into the detail of those that we've spoken to, but in the interests of what I spoke about earlier, in the interests of the phasing of the investigation, we haven't spoken to all of those that you would normally expect to have been approached by the end of the investigation.
How certain are you that there's just one person?
The letter is written in a way that purports to be from one person, but we clearly don't rule out that it's written in the name of others or indeed by more than one.
Is the development that led to you going public today further communications from the person blackmailing it, or because someone found out about it and was going to write about it?
Look, I'm not prepared to go into that detail now. I think it'll come out very quickly, but for the time being, I'm just not prepared to talk about what the reason is today specifically.
Can you rule out that it was because the person went ahead with their threat to go public with it if they didn't achieve their aim by end of March?
Absolutely, I can rule that out.
Scott, have you spoken to, have any of our officials spoken to any of our offshore markets?
What I can confirm is yes, in advance of today's announcement, the New Zealand government has reached out to our trading partners to appraise them of this. But fundamentally, what we're focused upon is making sure that any conversation we're having now is a conversation that is directed to mums and dads, parents and consumers, to give them the trust and confidence in infant and other formula from New Zealand.
How have our trading partners reacted?
I think New Zealand has a very strong reputation for transparency and openness, and our trading partners have reacted in kind in terms of appreciating the fact that we have been upfront and we gave them a heads up in advance of the announcement today.
Some of our trading partners have used these types of scares against us though, haven't they? I mean, you worried about that?
I think fundamentally what we're focused upon is the health and well-being of all consumers, and what we can say today on the back of all of the measures that we've been taking and the manufacturers and retailers have taken in recent times is that we have every confidence around the integrity and safety of infant and other formula product in New Zealand and elsewhere.
How long ago did you give them a heads up, the trading partners?
Well, I think that's been something in conjunction with discussing through the course of recent weeks of reaching out, but fundamentally in terms of our trading partners, that's in the course of recent times.
Have Chinese media been informed? Have you informed them in Mandarin?
Well, I think what we're doing today is an announcement to the media gathered here today. What we're focused upon is that this is a threat which is playing out trying to pursue a domestic policy objective, and we're wanting to make sure that we're starting the conversation here today so people here, the mums and dads, can have every confidence in the safety and integrity of the product.
When did you inform the minister?
The police minister, are we asking?
Oh, either.
Okay, the police minister was informed on the receipt of the letter, the threat.
So that was November?
Yes.
What about the Minister of Primary or Biosecurity?
I think, given the significance of this threat, the Minister for Primary Industries, much like the Minister for Police, was informed at the same time.
Is this an act of ecoterrorism?
I think you can you can come up with a lot of labels for this. In some ways, I think for New Zealanders who pride ourselves on our reputation and the integrity of all of our food, it is somewhat abhorrent in terms of the nature of this threat. But as the Deputy Commissioner has highlighted, we're viewing this as a criminal blackmail threat, and it has been taken very seriously.
So is it eco-terrorism? Because you put it in you yourself put it in the international class of food-related blackmail. I mean, is this eco-terrorism?
I think the way we're seeing it is that it's a criminal blackmail threat. In the context of the international dimension, what we have seen in recent years, somewhat unfortunately for consumers internationally, is that we have had, from time to time, deliberate criminal contamination of food systems. We have been fortunate here in New Zealand that that has not been the case. That is what we talk about in terms of food defence, where you're actually dealing with a deliberate contamination event, and we're dealing with that here. But the fundamental thing is, in response to that, manufacturers and retailers are standing shoulder to shoulder with the New Zealand government, taking the sort of measures that consumers would expect to be done so that mums and dads can have every confidence in that product.
So has any thought been given to stopping the use of 1080? Will you negotiate with the blackmailer?
I can't speak on behalf of the government with regard to the application of, or the use of 1080, but if we get into a situation of negotiating with the blackmailer, then that'll be a matter for that occasion, and as negotiations go, everything's considered.
So you're saying that they would actually give consideration to stop using 1080?
Well, the whole purpose of entering into negotiation or dialogue with a blackmailer is to draw out the common ground. So I can't say where that might end up. It's hypothetical, but I wouldn't rule out anything.
But
So you wouldn't rule out negotiating with this person when if that March deadline approaches?
Well, in the case of blackmail, the idea of entering into dialogue is to find common ground to resolve the issue. So I can't rule out anything in a hypothetical situation.
You are prepared to go to this person after the March deadline and say, we will stop using 1080?
No, I haven't said that. I said if there is a dialogue entered into between police and the person responsible for writing the threats, then we will seek the common ground in terms of resolving the issue.
But the common ground is stopping using 1080. That's the common ground.
Yeah. Well, no, what we want, that might be the ultimate common ground, that might be the ultimate aim of the threat. What I'm saying is that we want to resolve the issue. If we've got into a dialogue with the person responsible, then I'd like to think that we can resolve it so as that the police investigation can be drawn to the conclusion, and if there is a discussion to be had with 1080 later on, that is not a matter for the police.
All right, I'm aware that time's marching on here, we've got some deadlines.
But doesn't that
so
play
a couple
into
more questions.
Doesn't that play into this person's hands? Even the mere fact that you are entertaining, negotiating with him or her about this, that's what they want.
Well, I've said from the outset today, and I will repeat it, I would welcome an approach from the person or people responsible for the threat. Where that dialogue goes from there is a matter that's for the future in terms of how that might play out.
Okay.
I mean, we can't rule out anything.
Just finally, so we rule out that you might not at some point in the future, this is for NPO as well, stop using 1080. Can you rule that out? That might be a response to this.
Well, I think from the Ministry of Primary Industries' perspective, our fundamental concern is ensuring we're protecting the health and well-being of all consumers. And what we've been focused upon throughout the time since we were made aware of this threat is actually making sure that when we have this announcement and a public conversation, we can give mums and dads every assurance in terms of the integrity of their product. That's been our overarching priority, and it will continue to be our overarching priority.
Okay, we'll leave it there, thank you.
Sorry, just one more. When the secretary arrives, then pop it.
Thank you.
Okay.